Good evening, I am Amadin Ogbewe. Now, April 25th is a day set aside annually for the celebration of the World Malaria Day. It is also a day for commemoration and consolidating on the progress made so far in the fight to eradicate malaria across the world. For 2023, the theme is Time to Deliver Zero Malaria, Invest, Innovate, Implement. This is the message being passed for the year as regards the fight against malaria. Tonight I'm joined by Pharmacist Adamatie Samuel to shed some light on the progress made so far, the challenges and the way forward for Nigeria. Right, Pharm Adamatie Samuel, good evening and welcome to Top Talk.
Thank you very much and good evening viewers.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
All right. You were here to speak on Malaria Day, like I said earlier.
Okay.
That was on the 25th, if I get it correct. April, yes, just some days ago. Yeah, but it's still within that space where the awareness is still ongoing. So let's start with something really basic. So far in the fight against malaria, what would you say have been the standouts and the challenges and the successes?
Okay, thank you very much again, viewers. Looking at the fight against malaria in Nigeria, worldwide, yes, globally we're trying, but in Nigeria in particular, we see the progress, in as much as we have put a lot of things in place, the progress has been slow. And part of the challenges is, aside the fact that there's the human aspect, which is environmental, which is involved with that, there's also the government aspect. That is basically majorly what is affecting the progress per se. If you look at it, let's even start from the government aspect, our budget, the health budget. If yearly, they tend to increase it, but it's not even at the standard where they said, because from going to the AU, you have to have about 15% of your annual budget for health. That is what is recommended. But in Nigeria, what you get, even to the 2023 budget, that was even, the health aspect was increased a little bit. It's still about 5%, or there about 5 to 6%. So you see, it doesn't even meet to that standard. Then you now ask yourself, okay, this budget that is at that level, what do you use it for? If you look at it, most that have to do with involvement, access to primary health care is little or none. And that is where, when it comes to management or treatment of malaria, that is where people get that treatment, the source, from the primary health care. If you ask about how much is being allocated for primary health care. So you see, because of all this, the progress is very low. Apart from the fact that government will want to begin to partner with multinational NGOs or technical bodies to be able to assist. Do they have that zeal? So there's progress, but it's like a snail that's crawling. So it's very, very minimal.
Right,
the challenges are there. Yes, a lot of challenges are there, quite right. But I think so far so good. Based on the availability of those little contributions, yes, there's little progress. People can easily get access to drugs.
All right. Like before we speak on the theme for this year, I just want to quickly let's address some very local issues on the base level. Okay. There's a conception that people have that malaria is this thing where once you have it, just go get your drugs, take it, and you're fine. I think people believe that you don't even need a hospital. In fact, let me put it this way. A lot of people believe that whatever illness or whatever symptoms they have, it's malaria.
Yes.
And so they just go to the chemist, get the malaria drugs, and they say they are fine. What can you say about this ideology that malaria is not a big deal? It's just something, some people say you can go to work and have malaria. You just take your drugs, it's fine, and so on and so forth. So how do you debunk that if it is a misconception?
Thank you very much. It's a very, very big misconception, like you said. Malaria is not a big deal if, looking at the case, about 247 million persons coming down with malaria, according to global statistics in 2021 from the world. You say malaria is not a big deal. If it causes about, in Nigeria, you have about 32% global deaths, but Nigeria accustomed from that. So if you say out of 247 million and you take, say, 31% of it is in Nigeria that malaria causes death, that's about 60 something million. And you say that is a misconception. Looking at the press conference that was held by the FG some days ago, they said about 55 million or so Nigerians die of. So that is a misconception. That is definitely. So it's actually a big deal because I don't think for some other ailment you see that much debt like that. Then outside, I look at the economic issues. There was a study that I just stumbled on some days ago, and it says about 44% of Nigerians Nigerians, about 44% of the amount of money they get, they lose it to treat malaria. There was one woman that we listened to, was in Kobat, saying that for her kids, she spends most of her profit, she makes some money to treat malaria. So I think as much as it's a global sponge, it affects Nigeria more, and the consequences are also very, very daring, and they are more too. So we will not even accept to say that it's something you can just take lightly, can go to. Malaria, even the complications might not be able to take it to work. So it has caused a lot of absenteeism from offices, work. If you ask, majority of people that say they are not fine, they won't be able to come to work, maybe to even here, you find out that it is malaria that's causing it. So looking at it from the symptom to complications, it's not something we can just leave like that. Anemia can lead to death, which is one of the major symptoms of malaria, anemia, loss of blood, and the shortage of blood, rather. So you will need to now say that, it's just ordinary. We don't call it ordinary. Look at the death profile of it. Look at the cases increasing.
I think this is what people are not aware.
They're aware of.
People are dying.
Yes.
They feel like whoever gets malaria is normal, but you will always, come through, and you won't end up losing your life.
Who are these people? I like the way we are discussing. Who are these people? They actually, the people that you hear that from are the people that have adult age, because due to continuous exposure, they tend to be able to manage, the effect is not more on them. But looking at those that it kills more are mostly kids and pregnant women and the like. They are just coming up, especially for kids. So a child will not come, you won't get that kind of, in this part we hardly get data. But for the few ones we get, you find that they affect mostly children and maybe pregnant women and the like, but not majorly. It affects the adult, but not majorly like that, because you're already used to the body chain to be able to have some level of resistance against the parasite, but that doesn't mean it doesn't affect them. So that's where that misconception is coming from. That is just common malaria. Go and get data. You see how destructive that malaria parasite and this called malaria it is to people, the environment and the like. And given from the statistics I just mentioned, Nigeria is actually the hub of it, so that's why it needs to be tackled well. If you see about malaria generally in the world, is about 84 countries, that is where you still have it. But out of 84 countries, 29 countries of those 84 countries have 96% of that malaria scourge. 29 countries, and majorly in Africa. Then if you look at the 99 countries, half of the global death of those percentage is about 4 countries, and Nigeria is one of them. So what it means is that, for example, you have about 619,000 persons globally dying from malaria. Half of it comes from 4 countries in Africa: Nigeria, Niger, and some other 2 countries. Out of that half, Nigeria comes about 31%. So if you want to talk about malaria, you're only talking about Nigeria in particular. That's where it is. So, but when people get these statistics, they're able to know that how bad or serious what you are using, what you are handling is, apart from the money that is being spent, the economic aspect, the human aspect, and the environmental aspect of it. It's not something you can just take lightly.
All right, just a question that piqued my interest, and I think a lot of non-professionals think about it too.
Yes.
How is it that some countries don't have malaria, or is it eradicated it, or so to speak? What's really happening there?
That's a very, very good question. Let's start from countries that have it, going down to the ones that don't have it. Now, if you look at the countries that have it, most are developing countries. So I try to link things together. These developing countries, I don't know if the last time I checked, Nigeria was still the poverty capital, right? Or have
we've been overtaken.
We've been taken by India and also, but we are still in that league of developing countries. So you see, there's poverty. When there's poverty, people do not, the options are limited. When the options are limited, let's just look at housing, for example. People tend to now stay in places whereby it's what they can afford, because they don't have money to get a better house. So houses surrounded by bushes, a dirty environment, and those that make them become prone. In developed countries, I don't think you have such like that, because the government will want to assist to be able to make sure their environment is clean. So you see where poverty is linked. Because of developing countries, there's poverty, there's a challenge of keeping environment clean. That's where it breeds mosquito. The parasite comes in, and so person gets infected. So you can see there is a linkage. So having a better environment is also a good way, where for those countries whereby you won't be able to, that scourge of coming down malaria, so they're able to eradicate it. The government is involved, the individuals, the human beings staying there are also involved. Because it's not just one way, not government alone. The environmental aspect, you need to keep your environment clean. But what if you don't have that option? You are poor. You can't afford the basic necessary things, housing, food, clean water. That's an avenue. Even drainage. People don't even clean up their drainage very well. Refuse dumps and the like, because there's no proper legislation to be able to manage such, and so they are prone. So you see, so that's why you look at it. Is the developing one that suffer more? That's why when I said global, Africa more, you have very few of the European countries, but Africa more. Then you see the percentage coming down to Nigeria. So majorly it's just the preventive aspect and the treatment aspect. But the preventive aspect is what happens in the environment. Poverty majorly is one of those things. That's what happens more in developing countries. So
all right. So it seems the environmental aspect is really key to.
Very key. Aside the environmental aspect, there's less investment in it. I just told you about our budget.
Yeah.
AU is saying 15%. We are still battling for 5%. That budget, how many primary health care centers in this country functions? Mind you, we are looking at even treatment, because primary health care is existing to treat, to make people have easy access. And what the global WHO and other global partners do is they will not come and help you to clean your house, but they can provide insecticides for you. They provide mosquito expellent, provide avenue to do rapid testing, and so you treat. Access to the drugs, the artemisinin base and every other drug. However, the part that leads to treatment, they are not going to be involved. They just tell you what to do, maybe program sanitation, educate the individual. But if your economy itself or the government is not involved in it, you still boil down to the fact that we always react. When there's now the malaria pass, when there's malaria, the symptom comes, you need to now go and treat. So definitely the government need to be involved in, the individuals staying, the citizens themselves must be involved, but the government must provide an enabling environment that the citizens will see fitting that they are involved and to keep themselves healthy.
Oh, that's fair enough. You spotted or you brought out those demographics that are more likely to, succumb to malaria.
Yes.
What do you say about the general culture of self-medication? In the long run, is it dangerous? Because let me give you an anecdote. I have a friend. I won't say their name, so they won't say. But anyway, they have this thing where they believe that they know when they're about or they're close to getting malaria. So the moment they start feeling maybe their tongue is a bit, even if there are no other symptoms, they just take the drugs and the symptom goes away and they say, you know what, that was malaria coming. I've dealt with it. And I see that a lot of people keep, some persons just have a little sort of pharmacy. A lot of Nigerian mothers do actually. In the years, they have a bunch of drugs, different malaria drugs, depending on how serious it is for their loved ones and so on. Is there any long-term damage from all of this? Because in the short term, they say, I'm better now. So what's the issue? Yeah.
Well, the Nigerians believe that there's a pill for every ill. So if you are just feverish, you must take a drug. You must take a drug if you are. But sometimes waiting is even healing. But that's, by the way, self-medication. There's one adage I used to see somewhere where they say, you don't need to ask Google for people, because everybody want to Google their ailment and they feel that this is what they have. Whereas fever necessarily might not just be malaria. This is an infection. Fever can arise. There are other forms, and it just requires an expert to be able to tell you, okay, this fever, what kind of fever you're having, there's a likelihood of malaria, but they don't even treat empirically. That's why I said one of the ways that's why I said there's progress, but it's slow, because there's now this rapid diagnostic testing. So you need to test to confirm. Because you can test at home to confirm that one has malaria, you can now visit a pharmacy. A pharmacist will tell you how to use the drugs so that you get the beneficial effect. Because one of the issues of self-medication is that it can lead to resistance. Meaning that most persons believe that like I mentioned, illiterates or people that are not really vast about drugs, believe that if you increase the dose of a drug, you get a better effect. You forget to know that when you take a drug, you don't just say, for example, taking a drug for headache, say, I am taking this tablet now, go to my brain and work. It goes around the body. It goes to organs that are healthy, that are not healthy. So taking a dose above the recommended dose can begin to affect other organs. The drug is doing its work quite right, but it's affecting other organs. That's why it's not advisable, one, you engage in self-medication, because it can lead to resistance, one, it can lead to overdosing, which can affect other organs. There's always a long-term run for every drug, because they say all substances are poison. There's not the poison, only the dose that makes the difference. So you must seek proper medical advice. in terms of dosage, when you are sure you've run a test, looking at malaria as a context and rapid diagnostic testing to be sure there's malaria parasite in the blood you want to now treat, you seek advice to know what is better. Because resistance can occur when you misuse a drug, not even abuse. Now, misusing talks about you're supposed to take this drug twice, you took it once because you forgot. You took it for 3 days, you took it for 2 days. You're misusing it. And because abuse comes when there's a zeal, there's the urge for you to go and repeat the drug because there's this feeling you get from it. So that's not abuse, that's not misuse now. So, but when you now get proper tutoring or how to use the drug very well, because I'll explain all the side effects, you're able to take it. So self-medication, on the long run, like I said, it can lead to resistance. So when it leads to resistance, you spend more money because you don't know you have resistance. You have that same symptom, likely symptom, you feel you have malaria, you go take the same drug. When you take the same drug, it's not going to work for you. So you spend more time. You now see a doctor, they say, okay, run the test. You find out you have resistant malaria. You now look for another drug to give. So you see there are economic issues with it. So there's resistance with that. Then the long-term effect can begin to affect other organs, the liver, the kidneys, or the likes, because they begin to accumulate. It becomes toxic to the organs. That's why it's necessary you seek the help of a medicine consultant. That's what I meant by a pharmacist, to tell you how to use this drug if it's actually needed for looking at malaria as this context. Because now, a lot of people, I just let you know, a lot of citizens are coming down with resistant malaria, and we are the one that caused it. A lot. Now you see that sometimes most of these ACTs recommended ones no longer even work again. They take the actual dose, the proper dose, because of our own behavioral attitude, and like resistance is now occurring. People begin to misuse, because like it's mentioned, any symptom they have, they feel is malaria, they go take. So resistance begin to occur, and and for you to be able to fight resistant malaria, you're going to spend more money. Trust me. So it's not, what we need to advise our individuals, people, viewers, is that you need to be sure. Run the tests, rapid diagnostic tests everywhere. You can do it at home. You can be taught. You do it, and you are sure. Then you treat. But I'm not an advocate of always treating. I'm an advocate of prevention, preventive measures, insecticide, repellent creams, making environment clean. So those are the ways that you can prevent. Instead of, because when you treat, it's more costlier to treat than to prevent. Cost is not just about the cash. Holistically, you prevent it from going to work. And if you're the breadwinner, it's going to affect your family. You can even go to school. So there are a lot of things. So why not prevent than want to now treat? Indeed.
That makes a lot of sense. But while we're still on the issue of drugs, treatment, prevention, and so on.
Yes.
We've been hearing about, just in the news recently, that Nigeria, NAFDAC specifically, approved, so to speak,
the RTS vaccine.
Yes, they call it a malaria vaccine.
Yes.
Can you shed more light on that? What's that really about?
Okay, well, GSK brought one some time ago called the Mosquirus, but they stopped production. I think there are some issues with it. This RTS came out, and one African country started it before Nigeria has approved it. It's a 4-dose. They approved 1 million in doses. So meaning that it's just going to get to about 250,000 individuals, kids, because it's from 5 months that you use it. So it's a 4-dose thing. So if you have 1 million doses, so for an individual 5-month-old person to maybe 3 years that you want to use it for, you just need about 250,000 persons because it's 4 doses. The first 3 doses are 1 month interval. Then the last dose about a year later. Now, this actually is. When a drug comes in, whether a vaccine, there are different trial stages. So what NAFDAC is doing now is to say, okay, let's try this vaccine in Nigeria, looking at the phase 4 trial. Phase 4 trials, clinical trial is one that you have to use a large pool sample of humans. There's the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. There's one that involves using of animals first. The other tests you do for toxicity testing before you go to human. It's actually the phase 4 trial. So this is what is going to be. And from what I discovered, is not something they started. They just approved it, but to go into usage from 2024, I think April thereabout. Now, it's actually the trial. So if they see that it's good, we can now begin to use it. However, the vaccine is not to take away that. It's not Eldorado and say when there's vaccine, you don't treat malaria again. No. What it's trying to do now is to reduce the risk and susceptibility to malaria. So somebody takes the vaccine, you're less at risk of coming down with malaria or even dying from it. It's not like there's a vaccine now, not like other vaccines when you take, maybe measles vaccines or chickenpox vaccine, you don't come down with it for a very long while. But this might not necessarily go like that. It might maybe 1 or 2 years can be protective. Then, or if someone is even exposed, you are not really susceptible to the drastic effect of it. So it's not like the vaccine has come, drugs for malaria is off. No, these are other avenues that lead to progress, like I said, reducing global deaths for malaria or reducing the cases. It's not like it's now saying, when there's vaccine now, let's take away drugs. No, you will still use it side by side drugs. It's just that the susceptibility of those drugs, that's if the vaccine works, so after the trial, susceptibility of the risk of the drugs will not be that too much.
I'm very sure now that a bunch of persons watching this program right now would have, got a little bit worried when you said this is a trial phase.
Yes.
What are the risks involved? That's what Nigerians are always thinking. And if we don't, fill these gaps of information, someone somewhere is going to make a video and start spreading it on WhatsApp that this is what is happening in the vaccine, this is what's going to happen.
Okay.
Your head is going to swell up, this is going to happen. So, what about that aspect?
Yes. Like I said, there are trials. When the drug comes in, you have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. Now, before NAFDAC, we definitely approve that something should be used, because I get why you're saying this. Something like it happened in the past in Nigeria, about in Kano, thereabout, one drug that affected ketobuthamine, thereabout. Then, no proper, scrutiny. But we've learned our lessons. So, before NAFDAC, the present NAFDAC we have, and I think Professor Adeye is doing very well. Before NAFDAC, we approve of a product to be tried here. They might have done their own studies on it, their own standardization of the product, toxicity studies and the likes, and also getting proper reports. So I can assure Nigerians that this ROTC vaccine that has been approved to be tried will not cause any detrimental effect. That's why it's going to be. Let me even look at it this way. There are different conditions you watch. So you see, in as much as we are using 200, you're going to be tried for 1 million doses we expected and tried for 250,000. Their proper record, the way you have your COVID that came in. Other countries experienced a lot of issues with it, but Nigeria hasn't experienced more because from the National Primary Health Centers, collaborating with NAFDAC and other healthcare facilities that we have, they were able to do proper monitoring. So it's not, before NAFDAC will approve of a product, all necessary standardization, testing, toxicity and all would have been done. And before a product gets to phase 4, toxicity studies would have been done. That's why you start with animals first and every other thing. So before it gets to stage 4, it's when they bypass that and start straight to human. That's when you are scared of, okay, are they going to be very detrimental effect that can kill or maim? Because like you said, it's good you clarified that. I was watching, I think on one of these channels some days ago, when the lady was saying she will not allow her kids to be vaccinated for the anti-malaria. But if they're properly educated, that before it gets to phase 4, those studies have been taken care of. So what I'm just watching for is very minimal side effects, and maybe 1 or 2 that maybe it doesn't come like that. It doesn't.
That's fair enough. And I think sometimes people don't really get the fact that majority of the drugs you do take, or the vaccines or the injections, most of them still do come, if not all of them, from the same source.
Yes.
So you start to wonder sometimes, did these people just decide, let's just kill our customers out of the blue? But that again, you've heard from the expert here, that's been cleverly debunked. Now let's talk about the theme for the year. Okay. It says, time to deliver zero malaria, invest, innovate, implement.
Yes.
What can you really say about this?
Well, if I want to give an honest opinion, time to attain zero malaria, I will take it back to the progress. Between 2018 to 2022, thereabout, the prevalence rates in Nigeria fell from 23 to 22. That was just 1%. Do you achieve a zero malaria level with just in 4 years 1% drop in prevalence rate, with the Northwest having more of it, about 51.6% of malaria cases? How do you achieve that? Because if you link it back to, you have the history of the poverty index in Nigeria, you find out that Northwest, they have that, there's poverty inclined there. So you see, I mentioned earlier, when there's poverty, there's challenges of maybe proper housing and the likes. By extension, people living in areas where you have bushes, stagnant water. By extension, there's malaria. So you see the linkage. So if you want to ask my honest opinion about Nigeria, achieving that zero malaria, I don't know whether maybe in 2001, is it 2000, maybe 2007 to 7, we'll still be battling it. Because if in 4 years you only had 1% drop, that 1% drop can be huge if you are looking at population. Because 1% drop of 50 and 1% drop of 200, they are two persons, they are two different things. And so maybe as population is increasing, and so yes, there's reduction in numbers, but it's not commensurate to population increment. So yes, but invest, innovate, and implement. Global partners, yes, they're investing. But is it well implemented? If you ask me again, my own personal opinion, for what I've seen as someone practicing the community in Nigeria, implementation is not yet there. Well, they are trying. Most of these NGOs, they try. They provide insecticides, provide mosquito net, do a lot of outreaches, provide ACTs. But sometimes we ask ourselves, do they actually get to the end users? In terms of investment, again, they invest, they bring money, let's build primary health centers. But do they implement it? Because like I said, I want to be very honest. In our country where we are still battling corruptions, where instead of the man that is there that has that contract to provide primary health care centers, we divert the money to something else. That can even come from our budget. If we value our health, we will not be battling between 5 to 6% for our budget for health. So we start from the top. Yes, that is the team. Is it in reality? Honestly, I don't think so. Unless we're able to change our ways. Maybe the new administration will do something better. And they will change our ways and make sure that it's not about budgeting for health. It's about increasing the budget. So making that budget have increased, making it get down to the common man, making primary health care functional, making people get access to drugs, not only cheap drugs. Because a drug, most times we relate cheap drugs to drugs that are not safe or they are not effective. They call it efficacious. So it's not about a drug being cheap. Is that drug, is it effective? So it's about access to primary health care, access to drugs that are safe and effective. Then work on preventive measures. Because like I said, I always hammer on that because that will make you not bother yourself about going to get drugs to treat anyone. So that team, in as much as it's lovely, for a developed country, achievable. For the developing ones, also achievable, but with that, you need to take away the bottlenecks, like I just mentioned.
Right, thank you very much, Samuel. The key takeaway, and I believe our viewers should really take note of that, is prevention. Yes. It will save you a whole lot, figuratively, realistically, however you look at it. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much.